All right, let's stop. Hello class, it's Professor Streeter, and in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about the week 2 content module and just walk you through some of the assignments and what I've got there for you. On Wednesday we'll look together in the virtual class at the first essay assignment, so I'm not going to talk about that in this video, but we will talk about it then. If you can't make the meeting on Wednesday, I will share a recording. But it's a chance for us to get together virtually, talk to each other, see our faces, interact, communicate, and discuss some of the themes of the course. We'll have something to work on together as well. It will be a working meeting. So I hope you can join us. Let me put myself up here in the corner of the screen and we'll look at the D2L site together. Okay. So I've got the announcement here telling you how to join the Google meeting on Wednesday. I also shared an email with you. If you go to content, whoops, let me make this a view as student. You go to content for this week. We're in week 2 already, and I will begin sharing week 3 with you soon. We're focusing on the idea of hedonism. It's an idea about the good life, what it means to seek the good in life, that goes back to a Greek philosopher named Epicurus, and that's a Roman sculpture of him. Those are his dates. His idea about pleasure and the good life influenced a philosopher named John Stuart Mill, who wrote a long time afterwards in England in the 1900s, in the 19th century. And so we're reading both Epicurus and Mill. If you scroll down here, we looked at Mill's views on hedonism. He mentions Epicurus in his writing. And so you have a chance to look at Epicurus himself today. That's an online document that I've shared with you. You can find the readings here over on this module. If you don't have the book yet, I've got a PDF file of the Heathwood writing and Epicurus's letter. So if you click here, there it is, boom. And so it's a very short piece, kind of letter to a friend about how to live a good life, how to live the life of pleasure. He defends the idea that the life of pleasure is the best way to live. And then I've also got the Experience Machine piece by Nozick with the piece by Parfit that I wanted you to look at for this week. So there are 3 digital readings here for you to look at. Okay, so coming back to this page for week 2, begin to read the first 2 chapters of Schaefer-Landau, and this is where he introduces you in chapter 1 to the appeal of hedonism. What's appealing about the idea? As you read chapter 1, look at Mill and Epicurus. Both of them are hedonists. So see if you can draw the connection between what Mill and Epicurus are saying about the life of pleasure and what Schaefer-Landau is saying about hedonism in chapter 1. He's trying to bring out the idea and show what's appealing about it. Then in chapter 2, he turns to challenges to hedonism, or objections, or reasons for thinking that hedonism is false. Again, the core idea is that pleasure is the only thing that is good for its own sake. It's the only intrinsic good. That's the hedonist claim. No one would deny that pleasure is good or that pleasure is desirable, but the hedonist wants to claim that it's the only thing that really matters for a good life. It's the only thing all by itself that makes life better. Okay, so both Epicurus and Mill defend a view like that, and in chapter 2, Schaefer-Landau considers objections to that, or reasons for rejecting that idea. Nozick's Experience Machine is a good test case. If pleasure is really all that we care about, well, why shouldn't we plug into the machine? And that's what I asked you to think about for this week's discussion. So the discussion is available here. If you click here, it'll take you directly to the discussion. And so for this week, think about the Experience Machine. It's a short piece. The first part is to think about the fundamental question. Should you plug into that machine for life? Not just for a weekend or for an afternoon or even for a year, but just trading in your actual life for a virtual life plugged into the machine where you get to have all the experiences that you could desire. Okay, why or why not? What are your reasons? I'm interested in what your reasons are for thinking that you should or should not plug in for life. Then once you've explained your reasons, the second part, the second phase of the discussion is to think about or reflect on the reasons that you provided and think about what that reveals about your basic values. Right? So if you say, yes, I think you should plug into this machine if given the choice, okay, what does that tell you? And you explain your reasons. What does that tell you about what you really care about? What really matters to you? What we should really care about? And what is of fundamental value or intrinsic value, like what's valuable for its own sake. Reflect on what your answer in the first part has to tell us about that. And then finally, looking back at Epicurus and Mill and thinking about what Schaefer-Landau says in chapter 1 about hedonism. Are you a hedonist? That's ultimately the question I want you to sit with here. Do you agree with Epicurus and Mill that the best life is the life of pleasure, and that pleasure is the only good desirable for its own sake? Explain what you mean by that. Explain what you think hedonism means and whether you are a hedonist or not and why. Okay, so that's a lot to unpack in one discussion. See how far you get. And once you've shared your thread, you click start a new thread, right? And enter a subject line. Here's my view about, I give it a title, Experience Machine and Hedonism, however you want to think about the title of your piece. And then you can scroll down and type in your discussion thought and click post. But then you can go back and respond to something that your classmates have said. So once you sort of begin your post, then you can go in and look at what others say. And if you want to come back and add to your post or edit it or write a new post, that's totally cool. Okay, so that's the discussion for this week. It'll give us a way into our big topic, hedonism. And that's what we'll talk about together on Wednesday in more detail. So the more you post in the discussion forum, the better our conversation will be on Wednesday. Okay, coming back to week 2 then. I've also asked you to read a piece by Chris Heathwood, and this is what your first big homework assignment is designed to, sort of test your comprehension of. So if we, Heathwood defends a view about the good life that he calls desire satisfaction. The only thing that matters for its own sake at some level is satisfying my desires. The only thing that all by itself makes my life better is the satisfaction of my desires. So faring well just comes to the same thing as getting what you want. As long as you're getting what you want, your life is going well for you. Okay, so that's his basic view. And it conflicts in some ways with the hedonistic thesis. It conflicts with other intuitions that people have, including Nozick, about what makes life good and what's really worth desiring, what we really care about. Okay, okay, but that's something for you to consider, right? Heathwood is a subjectivist about welfare. He thinks that whether my life is going well or not depends on what I desire, and that determines, right, the conditions of my welfare, right? Insofar as my desires are being satisfied, my life is going well for me. Okay, so there's nothing more to say about welfare. It's an entirely subjective phenomenon. Okay, so think about the difference between Heathwood's view and a more objectivist account, where there are more objective measures of welfare. I have shared this week slideshows on how to read for argument, videos on how to read for argument. So I give you an example from Mill's piece on hedonism, and I kind of walk you through my own reading of the opening of it to give you a flavor or a feel for what it means to look for the argument structure and read for the argument structure, which is something we're working on together this semester. That's one of our goals. I've also shared a video where I kind of draw connections between the two books. So the Mill and the Epicurus readings on hedonism and what Schaefer-Landau says in chapter 1 about hedonism. So again, I kind of model a way of reading these two books together to help you think about what I'm looking for and what you can be looking for as a reader. Okay, these are meant to help you think about the task or the process of reading. We're going to be doing a lot of reading together this semester. I've also shared some slideshows here on the Good Life, on the chapters and the readings from this week. And here's a slideshow on arguments against hedonism, which is the focus of chapter 2. And we'll turn to some of those arguments in our discussion on Wednesday. So here are the videos that go along with some of these slideshows. Okay, so that's content that you can look at this week, especially if you can't make it on Wednesday. I encourage you to watch these on your own. And finally, the homework assignment. Okay, so I just mentioned that. For this week, the goal is to make some sense of a passage from Heathwood. So if you read, the most important thing to read this week for your writing is the Heathwood article. And I've given you a quotation. And the goal here is to develop your habits of analyzing a specific part of the argument that the author is making. Right, he's at a particular stage in his argument, so identifying where he is in the argument, giving your interpretation, and then I want to know what your response is. So it's not just a summary, but what do you think Heathwood is saying here, and what's your response? So the piece of writing that you submit should have a specific form to it, okay? So there's 4 things to focus on. Let me make this a little bigger for the video. First, what is the central claim he makes? What does he mean by that in your own words? Then, right, it's one thing to make a claim, it's another thing to back it up with a reason or with evidence. So what evidence or what reason does he give for believing the claim that you think he's making in this passage? Right, so the passage is here from 29 to 30, page 29 to 30 in the print version. The page numbers might be a little different in the digital version, I'm not sure, but this is Chris Heathwood's Faring Well and Getting What You Want. So this is, you can find this particular passage in that essay. And I'm asking you to focus here, but also you'll have to look at what surrounds it to get the context. Okay, so what's the reason that he gives in the essay for believing the claim that he makes in this passage? I want you to identify one reason in your own words, not 10 reasons, but one reason that he gives for believing the claim that he makes. And then the third step here is to evaluate the reason. Is it a good reason? That's where you're doing some interpretive work. Well, it's all requiring some interpretive work on your part. Is it a good reason? Why or why not? Explain. And then finally, here is really where you have to do some imaginative work. Suppose you accept the claim that he makes for the reason that you identified. What is the practical difference that that would make? If you accepted Heathwood's claim, how would believing that, for the reasons that you give, how would that impact the way you live, the way you think about your life? Give a specific example to illustrate that 4th part. Okay? So I give you an option. You can think of this as a short essay, right? A series of connected paragraphs, or you could just sort of break it down into 4 separate paragraphs. That's up to you. Make sure that when you cite Heathwood or anything else that you give the reference, but I want you here just to focus on Heathwood. I do not want you to use outside sources for this. If you do, you must cite them. And that includes any search engine, any artificial intelligence engine. I do not want you using those things for this piece. I want to see what you get from Heathwood. But if you're using anything like that, you need to cite it properly. Okay? So that's the homework. You have until next week to turn, you have until Sunday to turn that in. And that's all I have for the week 2 module here. If you haven't completed the quiz, there's still time today to finish the practice quiz. It's just 5 questions on the introduction to Schaefer-Landau. There was also, excuse me, still have a little bit of a cold. There was also a personal reflection assignment that was due last week. There's still time to turn that in for partial credit, where I asked you to think about happiness. Okay, so that's all for now. I just wanted to orient you toward the week 2 module and show you what we have available there. I'll see you on Wednesday for the virtual class. Please reach out if you have any questions about any of this, and set up a time to meet with me on Calendly this week or next week if that's better for you. I want to get to know each of you individually before we get too far into the semester. Okay, that's all. Thank you.